Right. So you've seen Carol Cadwallader making her plea to the tech bros, and you've read Dominic Cummings' attempted rebuttal of her specific allegations against him. It does get a bit nitty gritty, and I don't want you to get bogged down in the sort of he said, she said about whether vote leave adverts were marked as such and so. I mean, that was then. Like I say, our interest is in the next election, the next campaign, where this stuff may or may not be used. One question that naturally comes up is, how new is all this really? There's always been targeted campaigning. There have always been political campaigns where you say one thing to liberal professional North London and you say something else to the so-called Northern Labour heartlands or whatever it is, right? Targeted campaigning isn't new. Although targeting campaigning that's down to the level of the individual is new. That's never been done before. Targeted campaigning which evaporates and avoids fact-checking is new, and targeted campaigning that targets your psychological profile as well as your political interests, that's also new. On the other hand, psychological operations, attempts to affect voters psychologically, they're not new. So push polling is a device where you pretend to be doing a survey, but actually what you're doing is trying to plant ideas. So somebody rings you up and says, hello, I work for the Acme political polling company and I'd like your opinions. Do you have a few moments of your time? Would it affect your view of the mayor of your city if you discovered that he spends his weekend naked, covered in goose fat, and in the company of live geese? Of course, no one's suggesting that this is true, but hypothetically, I'm asking, would that affect your view of the mayor's policies on knife crime? And you give your answer, and you probably say, no, because I'm a rational individual. I understand that what people do on the weekend has got nothing to do with the effectiveness of the policies that they propose on serious matters from Monday to Friday. You put the phone down, you forget the conversation ever happened. 18 months later, you're in the polling booth and you're deciding who to vote for, and you're about to vote for this character, but you have a vague memory that there's something a bit odd about him, That's how push polling works. So push polling has been going on for as long as there have been telephones, and that's a psychological manipulation. So, it's not entirely new. People who defend these practices say, there really isn't anything new here. I guess the question is not whether they're new, but do they work? And if they do work, what should be done about them, if anything? At the very least, probably something should be done about modernising the electoral spending laws. If you're going to have electoral spending laws, then there shouldn't be a loophole that allows you to spend as much as you like in dark ads on the internet. The point I'd like to finish with is that we're all conspiracy theorists now. Why do I say that? Well, here is a bit from the trailer of The Great Hack, which is a documentary on Netflix all about this whole Cambridge Analytica story.
It's impossible to know what is what, because nothing is what it seems.
People who are resistant to conspiracy theories are usually resistant to conspiracy theories because they have confidence in the institutions of the media and government and the reality creating culture generally, right? You're less likely to believe in conspiracy theories if you think that the press is broadly speaking reliable and that there are limits on how much politicians can lie and so forth. You're not a fool. You realise that the press aren't unbiased and that politicians don't always tell the unvarnished truth, but nevertheless, fundamentally, the institutions of the state and the political class kind of rattle along in a tolerably reliable way. If you think that, you're less likely to be a conspiracy theorist. And people who voted against Trump and against Brexit tended to be like that. They tended to be not exactly content with the status quo because, there's economic disparities and inequalities and racism and sexism and all the rest of it. But there's a kind of faith in the institutions of government and the political class and the media. But now we have a situation where it's a standard belief amongst people who in 2015 were relatively trusting in the institutions of government and the media and democracy and so on. It's now a standard belief that one election and one once-in-a-generation referendum was stolen by who? By obscure, very rich people who were able to manipulate democracy and sway the masses by using manipulative voodoo, right? That's essentially what the great hack says. It's essentially what Carol Cadwallader is saying. Now, it doesn't matter to us, really, whether or not that's true. The thing to observe is that millions of people who were not previously candidates for becoming conspiracy theorists now think that at least one electoral outcome in the US and a constitutionally earth-shattering referendum in the UK were achieved by obscure puppet masters using their wealth to hire voodoo doctors to sway the populace and get their own way, and therefore the institutions of democracy and the media and the state and all the rest of it are no longer reliable because they can be easily manipulated by obscure, dark and wealthy forces. We are all conspiracy theorists now, which is not to say that there are no conspiracies.